Now, national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin explores what military options existed during the Benghazi attacks and the lasting impact that battle has had on our armed forces.
The attack on the diplomatic compound and CIA annex in Benghazi lasted more than 7 hours, and yet no outside U.S. military assets, fighter jets, or rapid reaction special operations teams made it into Libya in time to help rescue those who were left behind. This American special operator, a member of a Tier 1 unit trained to respond to this kind of crisis, speaks for the frustration felt across the special operations community that night. Since he is still engaged in classified missions, he asked that we shield his identity.
It's horrible. When you're on the ground, you depend on each other. We're going to get through this situation. But when you look up and then nothing outside of the stratosphere is coming to help you or rescue you, that's a bad feeling. Huge breakdown between state and military. The State Department and the Defense Department need to get on the same sheet of music.
But hours of testimony to the Armed Services and Oversight Committees by commanders who were at the Pentagon during the attack, AFRICOM General Carter Ham and former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta paint a different picture.
There was not enough time, given the speed of the attack, for armed military assets to respond. The Department of Defense and the rest of the United States government spared no effort to do everything we could to try to save American lives.
That statement differed from what Panetta said on October 25th at a Pentagon press briefing, a pronouncement that angered many in the special operations community, including some on the ground that night.
We were prepared to respond to any contingency and certainly had forces in place to do that. But basic principle is that you don't deploy forces into harm's way without knowing what's going on, without having some real-time information about what's taking place.
16 months later, after multiple hearings with military commanders, Republicans on the House Armed Services Committee say the lesson of Benghazi is of a military that actually couldn't respond because of, quote, a severely degraded location and readiness posture of U.S. forces.
They did what they could with what they had. The bottom line here is they didn't have what they needed to respond.
Republicans also concluded that, quote, military commanders did not take all possible steps to prepare for a more extended operation. According to the Armed Services Committee report, no attack aircraft were placed on high alert on September 11th. Fighter jets were unarmed and air refuelers were 10 hours away in Great Britain. House Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz blames it all on a leadership vacuum that night.
I think you're going to find that a lot of levers that the president had at his disposal were not pulled. Why did it take almost 4.5 hours to start the clock to prepare to deploy? It is the American way that when we have a man down, you send people in. We had people that were being killed. We had an ambassador who was missing. We didn't know when that attack was going to end. And the American military did not respond.
Chaffetz, who serves on the House Oversight Committee, put those questions and more to now retired Air Force Brigadier General Robert Lovell, the Deputy Intelligence Chief for AFRICOM that night. Lovell was in the U.S. Military Operations Center in Stuttgart monitoring the attack in Benghazi in real time.
There was desperation there to be able to...
It was what?
Desperation there to gain situational awareness and to be able to do something to save people's...
But did they actually do it? We had dead people. We had wounded people. And our military didn't try to engage in that fight. Would you disagree with that?
4 individuals died. Sir, we obviously did not respond in time to get there.
Could we have?
We may have been able to, but we'll never know.
In his testimony, Lovell echoes a contention made by Republicans that part of why our mission in Benghazi was so vulnerable was because of administration policy, a premature push to normalize relations with the Libyans.
Basically, There was a lot of looking to the State Department for what it was that they wanted.
That push for normalization may have spread beyond the borders with Libya, leading to a military force woefully unready to deal with a terrorist attack that would turn into a pitched battle for survival. In his testimony, General Lovell sounded a theme often heard from military personnel when reflecting on Benghazi, a view perhaps more from the heart than from a clear-eyed operational assessment.
There are accounts of time, space, and capability, discussions of the question, could we have gotten there in time to make a difference? The point is we should have tried.
When we come back, the panel and I will discuss what we now know about Benghazi, also its possible impact on November's midterm elections and the 2016 presidential campaign.